Back at it again with the Mobius Dickus, Chapter 40, Midnight Forecastle. Okay, so I'm gonna ring full alarm bells, wee-oo, 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 for the insane genre shifting that keeps happening, where now instead of first-person narration, we have full stage direction and dialogue form, as if this was a play. Again, I don't have to say it one more time, but I will. This is crazy for a book from 1851. Now, what do I have to say about the chapter? Well, obviously you know the plot because you've already read. There's a very, very cosmopolitan crew of the people on the Pequod, and their national identities get shared constantly. And we kind of got sailors from all over the world. And what they have in common is that they're all kind of partying and getting drunk after taking this oath to Ahab. And everything's going pretty well. As the old Manx sailor says, well, well, belike the whole world's a ball as you scholars have it, and 'tis right to make one ballroom of it. Dance on, lads, you're young, I was once. So everyone's having a good time, and they're all coming from different players. But what messes it up is this Spanish sailor, this, not so nice guy. And he says to Dagu, he wants to bully, eh? The old grudge makes me touchy, advancing. Aye, harpooner, thy race is the undeniable dark side of mankind, devilish dark at that. No offense. And of course I have that no offense in blue, because the Spaniard apologizing for blatant racism is reminiscent of, how anytime someone starts a sentence with, I'm not a racist, but they're definitely going to say something racist after that, in which case they just shouldn't be racist in the first place. This is the classic, if I say no offense after something, then that totally takes away all its offense, which is like juvenile and childish to believe, right? And Dagu, I think rightly, says grimly none when he clearly does take offense. And then eventually, Dagu can't help himself and, I think kind of rightly starts to go fight the Spanish sailor, who pulls a knife, and there's a fight, etc., etc. And this fight is only interrupted by a mate's voice from the quarterdeck, could be Starbuck, Stub, or Flask, who gets everyone to the sails because they're about to hit a squall, which is a violent gust of wind or localized storm. So a really, nasty storm. So how do we read this figuratively? Well, for me, I think what's being said here is that the highly cosmopolitan nature of the crew is obviously front and center, pushed into our faces, right? We're constantly reminded of how many different nationalities are here. And I think it's perhaps saying that if the Pequod is kind of a miniature version of the world or of America, that perhaps everyone can get along in a multicultural America. We can find things that unite us in a kind of brotherly sympathy in this image of dancing and drinking together. But of course, it is the fight between the Spaniard, an image of someone of the old world, someone who took part in the slave trade, Spain, and Dagu that challenges that unity and that getting alongness. So perhaps in a book written in 1851, when racial tensions were at a pretty high point pre-Civil War, Melville is making perhaps the point that the only thing that can get in the way of a harmonious, metaphorical, partying Pequod, and perhaps partying and harmonious America, is racism, right? That what derails this kind of fun, lighthearted celebration amongst people from a variety of different backgrounds is the Spaniard's willingness to say something incredibly racially problematic. I also think it's no shock that figuratively what follows the outburst of violence from this racial tension is the white squall, which is something which threatens the boat itself and requires everyone to respond and radically disrupts the previous actions of the boat, like the Civil War. Obviously, the Civil War hadn't happened, but my argument would be that Melville is at least saying that some form of violent outburst will occur because of this problem of racism, which will disrupt the otherwise harmonious nature of Pequod/America. Now, I also think that Pip, who is, noted to be black in this chapter, is interesting in that as he hides from the storm, he says, "Oh, thou big white God aloft there somewhere in yon darkness, have mercy on this small black boy down here. Preserve him from all men that have no bowels to feel fear." So perhaps we have Pip saying this because Melville is saying that, like Pip is an innocent child, that there needs to be some form of intervention against the kind of storm that might destroy America and all its black people with it if the South wins. Or he's saying that the people who will hurt Pip are people who feel no fear about fighting each other, who are willing to fight over the question of slavery and over the question of race. So I think this is an interesting chapter in terms of its playing with form, and I also think that the best way to read it is a way that I generally stay away from, which is historically and in super specific context to when this was written, but I think there's a strong enough reading based on those figurative elements I talked about to justify that reading as racial tension and its proclivity or ability to undermine the harmony of society. That's my take on the chapter, and I'll see you in the next video.